if that deck goes unanswered, it's going to sweep through what Pathra has to offer here. And I think Jia overall, just because of the rest and because of the additional preparation, has the edge.
Very nice. And now Frodan.
I'm going the exact opposite direction. It's not just because we should generally disagree on a Destiny, make it more interesting banter, but I honestly think that the lineup for Pathra is just well fitted. Jia had to ban Druid as her second choice. She banned Malygos Druid, the deck that no one else even brought. That's how scary Patra's anti-control lineup is, and Jia has control.
But ladies and gentlemen, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. WSOE 5, Jia is here to defend her title against Pathra. This is game number 1 of the championship series, and it is time. Pathra, Jia, WSOE 5.
All right, so looking at this head-to-head here, Clone Priest, Mechathune Warlock, Pirate Rogue. Pretty solid. I did have a question mark over Mechathune Warlock, but I look at the other side. There's a Controlled Dragon Priest. There's an OTK Paladin. These are decks where Mechathune Warlock can actually do work if there's given enough time. And then there's Token Druid, that weird X factor here, Admirable. I'm looking forward to see what can be done, but we're going to start things off with one of Jia's most interesting decks, which is a Control Combo Paladin.
Yeah, pretty weak opening hand here for Jia as well, as the deck is really seated around being able to draw tons of cards, cycle to the end of your deck, and assemble some form of one-turn kill possibilities. Now, there's 2 different angles she approaches it from. The first one that she's typically looking for involves Shirvala, shuffling it back into the deck, and then using Holy Wrath to deliver a 25 damage blow to your opponent, guaranteeing that Shirvala is the only card there. So Holy Wrath deals damage equal to that cost. Shirvala costs 25 initially.
Love it.
The second one is Uther of the Ebon Blade, which transforms your hero and starts making the 4 horsemen. Once you assemble the 4 horsemen at once and activate that hero power, what ends up happening is you win the game. And so she uses effects like Zola the Gorgon, like Youthful Brewmaster, adds those horsemen to hand until you can assemble all 4 of them guaranteed.
Yep, great breakdown of the summary for Jia side. Pathra, well, guess what she wants to do? She wants to play Cloning Gallery. She wants to play Mind Blast. And the only thing that's a little painful, though, is that both Radiant Elementals have been drawn.
Yes.
That is the one caveat to Patra's hand. So, as much as I'm like, well, Pathra has a great opening hand to try to, like, cruise to a victory here, the problem is she won't have the access to the mana discounts, and that might give Jia some time, because the thing to look out for in this game number 1 here is the timing of timeout. Timeout is going to be Jia's crucial card to buy her that extra turn, stay alive, and maybe combo Pathra back. And that is the delicate tightrope dance that we're going to be doing all game long.
Yeah, and for Pathra here, the second Radiant Elemental played, this is a really important turn to pay attention to, because once you don't have the possibility of the Cloning Gallery delivering a 1-turn kill, the real goal that you search for after that is using Resurrect effects to get those Radiant Elementals back in play. So one of the big ones is using Radiant Elemental and then playing a Resurrect effect, discounting all your spells, and launching them at your opponent. That's no longer a possibility to hold them. She'd have to naturally resurrect them, and a card like Spellstone cannot resurrect the same minion twice.
Right, and so this is something that we actually saw happen at the very beginning of the tournament. Game number 1 with Korra versus Alistraza, we saw Korra kind of recklessly throw her second Radiant Elemental from the hand and miss an opportunity to set up lethal on the following turns. This is a gamble by Pathra where she's trying to fight for board dominance in a combo matchup. And that's something that I don't necessarily expect, because it's 2 Righteous Protectors. They're not there to pressure you. They're there to defend the pressure from the opponent.
Yeah. And Velen here early.
Goodness. Hold on.
Off the Shadow Visions. This is really scary for Jia at this point, where
can't deal with it.
You don't want to face this kind of pressure early on, and almost every time that we've seen Malygos or Velen entered play, we have to start talking about lethal possibilities that are on the other side of the table. This Velen sticking in play is going to spell bad things for Jia if it's here for, you know, say 2 or 3 turns in a row.
Right. And it's just going to hit for 5, and it heals.
Yeah.
With Mind Blast dealing 10 each.
I mean,
that's lethal next turn.
Jia is under the threat of lethal pressure right here.
Okay. Oh, quality costs 4 now instead of 2. Dude, Jia is going to die next turn unless she gains health, deals with the Valen, or plays timeout.
I don't think any of those things are going to happen. Jia, I think, is very likely to just draw some cards here, say, oh, she's got to have 2 Mind Blasts in order to kill me. What are the odds of that?
Oh, my goodness.
And they're slim to none.
Oh, wait. She still can play a timeout. She doesn't.
And it's honestly, it's correct of her to not take this angle. Pathra just has the goods, and Gia's done.
Yeah, she's nodding her head, recognizing, okay, she's got it, and That's a percentage play, and that honestly doesn't happen fairly often, except when it keeps happening with a deck like Clone Priest, you feel like you've got to respect it eventually.
That's the thing, and we've seen players all tournament long clearing off Velens and clearing off Malagos in fear of what can happen.
Wow.
What you just saw is the reason they clear those. Even when it looks like a weird play or situation where you shouldn't be going for those big threats like that, you have to always respect the damage from hand, and the longer the game goes, the more dangerous that is.
Yeah, you can't always just play the numbers of percentages of if they have it or not, because sometimes random stuff like that happens. But that is game number 1 to Pathra. But don't go anywhere. We're going to be going into game number 2 right away. But this has me scared for Jia's token druid, especially with this priest. I think she was trying to get the priest out of the way to avoid Psychic Scream from bouncing back all of her tokens. What do you guys think about that?
I think that, in my opinion, okay, if you ask me, I'm going to be very honest here. I think bringing OTK Paladin to this tournament is a mistake. I think this deck is vastly inferior to almost every other variant that you could have brought for Paladin, largely because it does everything else that the other combo decks do, but it's way slower. You have to deck out, which it doesn't do as nearly good as Druid or Priest or, you know, even like Warlock. You have to also make sure to assemble pieces of your hero power, which take like 2 to 3 turns, and it only works sometimes because you might get the same horseman. I think Jia tried to get a little too creative, and I respect the fanciness of her lineup in terms of the bravery. In terms of the execution of it, it didn't pay off for game number 1, and now that Paladin is history. You can't bring it anymore. It's eliminated.
Yeah, last hero standing is the format here. So when you lose the deck, it's out of contention. And when you win with the deck, you get to keep playing with it. And I'm not as afraid for Jia as, you know, given the cloning gallery priest, as I am for just having lost the OTK Paladin in the fashion that it was. This deck was supposed to put up a much bigger fight than what it did. And since it didn't, that's really where my fear is. However, this matchup right here with her Dragon Control Priest, this is where things can change up. I think that this matchup has a slight edge to Jia where things are concerned because just the nature of where your damage comes from. You have so many tools that can disrupt what Patra's trying to do, and you yourself are constantly applying that pressure right back to Pathra. So where Pathra is requiring certain key cards, you know, to show up in a timely manner, Jia just needs to have things that attack.
Right. There's a few cards that will play huge roles in this game. One of them is Psychic Scream. If you're able to shuffle minions into the deck, cards like Shadow Essence and Zarek's Cloning Gallery end up being a little bit more awkward. And more importantly, if they end up summoning them, that goes into their res pool as well.
Yeah.
So those are ways that you can manipulate things into your favor. The big problem is Clone Priest can still burst for unreasonable amounts of damage.
Yes.
And there's not much that a defensive control priest can do about it. Their option instead is to pressure, which often comes down to, do my opponents have their Psychic Scream instead? And that's why I disagree with you, Admirable, in that scenario where I think Clone Priest has a slight edge, but it's very minimal. I think it's fairly close either way.
Yeah, I would say a couple things to look at are the fact that some of the key cards in the matchup are not necessarily key cards. Or, I'm sorry, key cards in the deck are not necessarily key cards in the matchup, where
Right.
you take a look at Jia's hand with Duskbreaker. Duskbreaker is one of the reasons that you play Dragon Priest. It's such a powerful card. But in this matchup, it doesn't really do anything. However, there's kickers like Fire Tree Witch Doctor, where right here, Jia has access to Shadow Madness to steal away one of the things from a res pool and perhaps generate an advantage of her own. I think all of these little factors really add up. And for me personally, again, I'm just going to disagree with you here, Dan. I think that minions that attack in a matchup where you both have the same style of burst damage favors the one who's attacking more.
It's fair, and I mean, Shadow Madness here is massive because it's stealing that minion, specifically taking the coin away, which is already an impact immediately, and also takes away that card from potentially being resurrected. At the same time, Pathra is playing the less greedy version too. It's a little bit less all-in than going for just a giant 80 damage Mind Blast, and it's more about the minions and the walls that it can set up with the Witchwood Grizzlies, and you have a bailout through Lyra the Sunshard.
Yeah, I definitely think that, you know, resurrecting Witchwood Grizzly is where things can get pretty scary for Jia, where you have to consider in totality what those defensive measures mean. And outside of things like, you know, stealing key minions with Cabal Shadow Priest and Twilight Acolyte and the such, the defensive measures for Pathra are very effective against what Dragon Priest has to offer. So, you know, so much of it boils down to just the momentum of that particular game and where it's headed. It's in my opinion, just pretty tough to evaluate from a top-down position.
Yeah, and, you know, as you can see, Pathra does not have an easy way to deal with this Twilight Drake. I have been liking the way Patra's been playing fairly aggressive on the board. One thing we didn't mention is, oh sorry, we did mention it a lot actually. We were like, you know, are you sure you want to play Radiant so aggressively on the board previous game? That was the reason she was able to get the damage she did early on.
Yeah, that's a true story.
And was able to push for the victory. So it ended up having a really good payoff, which I wasn't anticipating, and I stand corrected on. And I think that might be the case in this game as well. The board tempo on both sides is going to matter a lot.
Where you get an opportunity to Dustbreaker against the Resurrection Priest, but when you get them, you take them.
Like a good one, you know?
Yeah.
Like there's an opportunity previously, but it was like you kill your own Gluttonous Ooze, and that's not what you want to do. Does the Resurrect here come into play, or the Shadow Essence?
Yeah, I think Patra's hand is shaping up in a really interesting way, where OTK possibilities are still very real, and you know the defensive measures are super effective still against what Jia has. You know, now that Witchwood Grizzly is in that pool of dead minions, what that means is that the Resurrects every single time represent this giant wall that Jia has to get over.
Yeah.
And I think that's really where the problems begins to start here. You know, Jia has had some decent pressure, but she's missing some of the key cards that I look at. You know, like Twilight Acolyte Cabal Shadow Priest combo. She still needs both those pieces to be active. Doesn't have Shadow Reaper Anduin. Doesn't have Alexstrasza to maybe deliver like some significant pressure at an unexpected point. Right now, she's honest fighting with minions.
It's honest, but it's also scary because we're coming up on the point where if Patra has a single Xerx's Cloning Gallery, she's going to have enough mana to actually go for the burst.
Yeah.
Which is why Jia was taking the Gilded Gargoyle to strip the coin away from Patra. Yes, Radiant Elemental discounts spells, but coin does the same thing too, and coin's more immediate versus Radiant is like more combo oriented.
Yeah, also just looking at the way that Mass Hysteria is starting to line up, you know, this is a major point for Patra right here where she clears off, you know, 2 pretty high priority minions just for 5 mana.
If she picks up the Cloning Gallery, she should snap pick that, I guess, but she doesn't have it. So that's definitely a whiff for Patra that she would have liked to get, but that could have been like a huge deciding moment.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that Jia's Psychic Screams are just not as impactful in the match as Patra's are. As you can see, Patra's path to get to this point, you know, put Slissa in double jeopardy and was able to be very decisive in that match. Ended up having a very close set versus Songbird in the double jeopardy on that scenario. And I think that's like really one of the big pictures to look at is you turned that dominant performance that Songbird had, you turned it into a close match for a win. And that's really what earned this chance for Patra.
Yeah, for the most part, Patra's games have been pretty one-sided up until her decider match versus Korra, which was a nail-biter. For me, that's the series of the tournament so far.
Yeah.
If you guys missed it, definitely go check out the VODs because it was a photo finish.
And here, you know, the way that this has panned out, this is a major advantage to Patra at this point, where Jia is like struggling to get relevant pressure and has drawn so many dead cards in the matchup at this point. Both Dustbreakers, both Psychic Screams. As far as Jia is concerned, she wants us to be like the bottom 4 cards of her deck.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's application for Psychic Scream, just to mess up the Cloning Gallery, but I think based off the calculation, because there's 2 coins in the hand, the Cloning Gallery would have already came out. Because it comes out on 8, and then Mind Blast gets discounted to 1, and Holy Smite to 0, and then you just kill them.
6 cards that have the lowest impact in the match when I look at the deck list. The ones that come to mind for me are Tar Creeper, Gluttonous Ooze, 2 Psychic Screams, 2 Dustbreakers, and then Primordial Drake, pretty middling. She's drawn all of those cards.
Is Elun's will?
No Norshire Clerics. No Cabal Shadow Priests.
Yep.
Missing the big ones of Shadow Reaper Anduin and Alexstrasza.
Looks like Gia's just not going to acknowledge this Radiant Elemental. Wondering if she wanted to deal with it, but again, I think she's making that read. You have 2 coins.
Yes.
If you want to Cloning Gallery, you would have done it already. Plus, she used Shadow Vision. She absolutely would have gone for it. Either that or she's missing combo pieces. And that's another screen which Patra does not need right now, but
I mean,
she might use it anyway.
It looks great. I mean, you're wiping off so much pressure from Jia, who's just so far just been minion assembling. And right now, I mean, Jia's starting to run out of relevant minions that are sizable threats in the deck. If you get to a point where Gia's having to develop pressure by playing a Cabal Shadow Priest, that's a fantastic sign for Patra.
Yeah. And no worries that the Radiant Elemental gets shuffled into their opposing deck because 1 already died. So the Resurrect pool is 4 different minions. You can't resurrect 2 of the same Radiant Elementals.
Well, Shadow Reaper Anduin drawn.
That's a big draw.
That is a major draw for Jia. Honestly, that's probably the biggest draw in the deck at this point.
Yes.
Because this allows her to start chipping away at that life total. And this is where things get scary for Pathra. She's missed that window where she had, you know, the one-turn kill with Zarek's Cloning Gallery. Jia obviously has noticed that's not a principle at this point. So right now, it's a race against can Pathra find relevant ways to start pressuring, or is Jia going to get to the point where she just chips away at the life total and uses Mind Blast Hand?
Yeah, and you can see Pathra is trying to charge up this Spellstone to resurrect that Radiant, to resurrect the Gilded Gargoyle, get that coin back, and this Grizzly to put pressure on, because now her burst range is reduced. It's still 34. That's one off from where it is. She needs to actually hit Jia at least one time this game with a minion.
Yeah, and suddenly the 2 Psychic Screams, which were dead weight in Jia's hand, become relevant cards, where Pathra is having to apply pressure right back, because that's the only way she's going to find a chance in this game.
It's also the last series, by the way, for these bounties to be claimed. Comeback Kid can only be done, or only be tied by Jia, apparently, because Pathra is up 1-0.
Yeah, so Pathra would need to win this game, and then Jia sweep back in that situation. And then going viral is going to be ending after this one as well. So we'll see who's winning that one in the popularity contest at second place there.
Jia getting that damage in. 16 is often a damage threshold, but needs to get a little bit lower. Plus, she needs to pick up the second Mind Blast.
She's not even sweating the minion pressure right now, and I think this is smart from Jia for a number of reasons. And one of the big ones is because Pathra has so many minions on board that if she were to draw Cloning Gallery and have the goods, there's more minions in the deck that Pathra can hit. And what that means is, because her board space is taken up by these minions, it's less of a chance to find that perfect outcome and deliver that lethal blow.
That Zilliax draw, though. How big was that?
That's always an important card when you're getting pressured. It's just the fact that it restores life, the fact that it threatens to resurrect here. This is where I think Jia is, you know, looking for an opportunity to use Psychic Scream coming up.
I think Pathra is maybe deciding if she wants to trade in her Gilded Gargoyle first. Or actually, it doesn't really matter, because I guess the evaluation is Spear Lash versus Gilded Gargoyle trade. Get the coin.
Yeah, I think if I'm in Patra's seat right now, my number one concern is life total.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree, and I think that, you know, rushing the combo is not exactly what you're looking for, because you don't even have the Cloning Gallery.
Yeah, you're just missing a lot of stuff.
Also, you still have the mana to do it.
Oh, that's a big draw. Being able to find additional copies of any burn spells in the deck, just being able to, you know, utilize excess mana in a way that lets you continue to cycle through these hero powers, I think it's a really big deal.
Yes.
And there's more damage. So the question for Jia now is the relevance of the Holy Fire healing versus the efficiency of the Mind Blast damage, and I'm almost certain she's leaning towards the Mind Blast damage. There's also some value in just taking your time here and not telling Pathra that you nailed a good card in this spot.
Right. Well, the whole point is, can she withstand the damage points too? Because, you know, it's not like Pathra has to kill at 34, right? She can still kill through 20 if the Mind Blast is good and you play like a Malygos from hand. Now that's the equivalent of what you can do.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in this hero power where, you know, Jia's being very patient with the Psychic Screams and waiting until Pathra plays something of high value to utilize this, and this has paid off, I think, pretty darn well with her patience.
Yeah, and I think she's like also saying, I need to draw Alexstrasza. I'm not going to try to rush in my damage right now. Doompact is kind of a useless card here for Pathra. Alexstrasza being drawn, that's really big.
I'm officially going to be shocked if there's no Psychic Scream.
Wow, you're so brave.
I mean, honestly, I'm shocked it stayed in the hand this long.
I think it's understandable given that Jia's already recognized that, look, the breakpoints in this matchup are fairly big in gaps. It's not like 20, 23, 27. It's like 20, 34, and 1900.
Man, that is a hero power pass turn.
That's an Alexstrasza. This is an Alexstrasza
into the game. Patra's in trouble.
Patra's in deep trouble. Doompact actually ends up being reasonable in this spot. Look at that.
Yeah, it's just not very strong.
Well, she's also on a draw to win. The moment the Cloning Gallery comes to hand, this game is over.
Yeah, if she draws Cloning Gallery, she wins, I believe. So there's Radiant,
Malygos, and Valen.
Yeah.
Oh, she snap called the card. And here's the problem. The Radiant's now drawn, which means that that mana reduction is no longer going to be part of it. Powered shield.
She's going for cloning that. She's going for cloning
Oh, she's going for
right
it.
there.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
That's a very wise play from
Yeah.
Pathra, because that Radiant, that was a Psychic Screamed Radiant? Is that right? And the first Radiant that died, was that a Shadow Vision? No, it wasn't a Shadow Visions one.
You're right. There could have been 2 Radiants in the pool because one they were shuffled back in with the Witchwood Grizzly and whatnot. And the Lich King. So that was a really good spot by Pathra, being able to just play to 1 extra out there. But now the threat of Alexstrasza remains and Patra's life total. So I think she wants to Spirit Lash first and then Doom Pact. But the problem is she also has to be very careful not to discard Zera's Cloning Gallery. So playing more minions would be a huge threat.
That's the thing. It's like moving you away from the idea of playing Doom Pact, is that you could burn one of those cards, and then you just can't win after that. You cannot win if you burn the Velen and Malygos, I think, in this.
She doesn't want to take that risk, and I don't blame her, but with 2 Mind Blasts in the hand, that means Jia is going to strike back. And that's going to be a tied series.
Yeah, that was a very clean win from Jia in that one. And this is like, I think is, you know, pretty, again, lopsided scenario with it, which is what you're going to get from this matchup. You're either going to see big blowout wins from Pathra, or you're going to see Jia claw her way into this with Shadow Reaper Anduin and then just deliver a lethal blow because of the amount of pressure she consistently applies.
Yeah, that early Shadow Reaper Anduin really enabled Jia to stay in that and then eventually find that damage. And of course, the Alexstrasza draw really, really enabled Jia to close that game out. But that is only game number 2 of our championship deciding match. We are going to take a quick break. Everyone, stay tuned.
Hey Twitch chat, it's me, Lauren Jabara, one more time during these commercial breaks. Make sure that you're getting your custom-made WSOE merchandise. All you gotta do is scroll down in that stream, click on the merchandise tab, and voila. It's like magic. That link's gonna come up, and you can choose whatever you want. Ooh, just hit the microphone. You can choose whatever you want, so make sure to do that, okay? Scroll on down there, click on it, get yourself a nice WSOE beautiful t-shirt.
Welcome back to WSOE 5, Hearthstone, the Return of Jia. And Jia is in the middle of returning as she just struck back against Pathra, tying the series 1-1. And quite frankly, putting Pathra in an awkward position, defeating her priest. That was kind of the only threat to her druid. But there's also something else looming around the corner. Admirable, how do you feel about these matchups coming up?
Well, I'm looking at Patra's Rogue, and I think that this needs to pick up a key win in this matchup because the Dragon Priest versus Mechathune Warlock that Pathra has as her Warlock deck is bad news for Pathra. She does not want that matchup at all. She really wants that Mechathune Warlock to play against the Token Druid so she has an opportunity to sweep out boards. So she has to go for Rogue in this instance, but one of my biggest fears about this is Duskbreaker. Duskbreaker is so good against the Pirate Rogue deck. And there's one of two things that really changes that, which is number one, Hench Clan Thug being present, or number two, Falderai Strider being able to pull some big weight. I think outside of those two factors, it's going to be really tough for Pathra because even with Hench Clan Thug and even with like Captain Greenskin to be big threats, Scaleworm can offer to really check those back. And so I think Patra's got her work cut out for her and is going to have to find a win here in some way of getting overwhelming pressure. And with Duskbreaker present, that's usually what doesn't happen.
All right, well, Hench Clan Thug is pretty solid turn 3. Can piece it from there.
Yeah, that's
Jia
definitely one
has
of the better
the
ones.
hand of the gods, though.
It's very good.
That is so good. And the statistics do tend to favor the Pirate Rogue. Personally, I think Pirate Rogue is favored in this matchup. But if you have Duskbreaker in your opening hand with Scaleworm to follow up, I'd say you're in good company.
That's the thing is, when it's on paper, Duskbreaker has to show up. But once Duskbreaker shows up, how does that change? And right here with the Hench Clan Thug, it's already throwing Jia into a bit of a tough spot where she has to use coin, she has to use Scaleworm, and that gives an opening for Pathra to perhaps be able to capitalize on this. But right now, her hand is not super strong versus what Jia has. So it's going to take, a couple of draws here and there to really power this up. And one of the big ones I look at next is Edwin Van Cleef.
Yeah, except the thing about this Shadowblade setup is that it also plays directly into the Gluttonous Ooze. That's like the big thing. Usually Gluttonous Ooze against most like rogue decks that aren't playing weapons isn't even that impactful, right?
Yeah.
It's minorly impactful, but not huge.
Like sometimes it shuts off a South Sea deckhand perfect setup.
Right. But this is big. It gains life and it shuts down the momentum. So Jia has the opportunity to Duskbreaker or Gluttonous Ooze. Both are pretty good, I'd say. And if you don't connect the Gluttonous Ooze to this Shadowblade, that's okay. Because another key card for Pathra will be that Raiding Party. And if you get that Raiding Party, you guarantee you have the Shadowblade. Yeah. And then you can get the Gluttonous Ooze land there.
Those are two of the big ones I look at too, is like the Shadowblade, the Raiding Party and how much value it provides. And then also, of course, Myra's Unstable Element and how it gives you access to all that burst at the end of the game. For Jia here, the real question was Duskbreaker or the Gluttonous Ooze and the Power Word Shield. If she had not drawn Power Word Shield, this would not have been a question in my opinion. I think it would have been Duskbreaker and just, easily said and done at that point.
I mean, this is a tale that we've been talking about for a long time, which is the Rogue is great at putting on pressure, but it's looking very thin outside of these 4 cards that are in Patra's hand. South Sea Deckhand is like a great pressure tool when you have the ability to add a little bit extra damage or just a little bit extra removal, but there's no oomph in Patra's board right now. It's a very weak association of pirates.
Golly, this is just kind of a weird spot to be in. I mean, that is very much the win conditions. Myra's Unstable Element. She needs to get some amount of pressure, put Jia into a somewhat dangerous spot, and then just have all the cards in the world to be able to end the game afterwards. And right now, I'm looking at Jia's hand, and that feels miles away.
Right. And for context, imagine if that Gluttonous Ooze wasn't able to come down, Pathra would still have the weapon and be able to put on 3 more damage, and Jia would be at 22.
Yeah.
That's, when you piece it together, Jia would probably be in the single digits worth of life. Now, of course, we know Jia has a Duskbreaker, so that wouldn't be the scenario setup, but it just goes to show you how those tech cards can have a very big influence on setting you to that dangerous life total, or for you to not even have to worry about it.
Patra's running out of time here. She has to make a decision.
I think that's
push.
I think you have to push damage.
This is going
I
to
just don't know
massively.
if this is anything close to enough.
Yikes.
This Duskbreaker is absolutely back-breaking, and like you mentioned, Patrick needs to win this matchup, because if she was able to beat this Control Priest, I would say it's clear skies, because Token Druid seems to be weak against the remaining deck, but this is looking very hard to defeat right now.
Okay, so Deadly Poison picked up but a charge expended last turn on the dagger. So what I'm looking at is the Deadly Poison Eviscerate Edwin Van Cleef. Like maybe you get something rolling in that situation. You're able to pick off something and keep going from there. So because there's only one charge left, though, she doesn't want to just waste the Deadly Poison that way, and I don't blame her. It's an SI7 agent to contest the Northshire Cleric here. You pick off the 3-2 in the meantime. You get to kill the 3-3. You're in that situation where maybe you can keep fighting for board in this spot.
Oh my goodness.
But Jia just has reload against this. Like, you know, it's slow, and it deals Jia some damage in the meantime. So that's an opening, at least, for Pathra at that point. But she has to be able to capitalize on the opening, or none of it's going to work.
Wants some Mind Blast for the late game, but that's not what she's looking at. She's looking at surviving. Because realistically, if she's just able to land Shadow Reaper Ranuin and Alex Straza and not die in those successive turns, she's going to be able to win the game anyways without Mind Blast. And so I think that's what the Power Shield is picking up here.
Yeah, you're just looking for extra gas at this point. You know, I actually don't
one
believe...
damage off lethal, she picks up Leroy. Oh my goodness, that is a Myra's Unstable Element that came to the hand. Admiral, how big was that?
That's the dream draw. That's the huge draw. You have to have that card in Patra's spot if you're going to win this game. Bar none.
And you just rib it this turn.
What else you going to do?
I like it. I think you get the damage in any capacity that you can.
It's scary because Patra's behind on board, but she doesn't have a way to get ahead on board.
No, she could sap. She could pick up sap and find a way to keep on pressure and actually be ahead on board. 2 eviscerates. That's 10, 14 damage right now.
So Dread Corsair is going to die if she plays in this scenario. I think you're fine with that.
That's okay.
You have 2 eviscerates. You have the Captain Greenskin. I think that the push here is viable. There's also the SI7 agent for a little bit more damage.
Yeah.
So I think Patra with that Myers Unstable Element and the outcome on it probably has just enough to get there.
We'll see.
Yes. And with 7 mana, Jia does not have a strong point of protection. It's the 1 copy of Tar Creeper. Everything else waits.
She's going to go digging. Tar Creeper, that is really big. And there's no sap and no way to remove minions very easily through like a Vile Spine Slayer because this deck doesn't really run that. That's a big pickup.
Yes. That is massive because she has the Powered Shield to compound the issue as well. And at this point, I'm curious with Jia and like weaving in hero powers. This is also like another really delicate thing. It's like, can you afford to play this Fire Tree Witch Doctor next turn and perhaps the spell you want to get from it? Or do you need this 2 extra healing? And right now, when Patra's working against fatigue, my instinct tells me healing is paramount.
Yeah, I think I value the healing. Witch Doctor can pick up some big stuff like Divine Hymn, but it also can just get a bunch of trash that you don't really want. And more importantly, you get Primordial Drake as another taunt the following turn.
Right, and if you look at Jia's deck list, she doesn't have any real natural healing. It's 1 copy of Holy Fire, and that's it. There are no natural Divine Hymns that are included in her list. So if she's going to find extra healing, it's going to have to be from something like Fire Tree Witch Doctor. You know, a weird Alex Straza turn where putting yourself up to 15 is enough. So Patra's racing against the clock. Gia's racing against the pressure that Patra's going to apply.
So many options.
I mean, that Tar Creeper
That
just
Tar Creeper
made this
massive.
made Patra's hand look so good to, wow, this is suddenly a really big challenge.
Yeah, she's going to have to take it even slower.
3/4/4 is coming next turn, though.
Man, I think she'd even rather have it now if it was possible to draw a card in some capacity.
She's going for a big Edwin here.
Choose soon.
Losing that dagger, it hurts so bad. Because of the Captain Greenskin upgrade.
That 1 Tar Creeper just changed so much of this game.
Yeah, even just the buffed health Tar Creeper.
That's the thing that I see, though, is that for Patra, because she's got that guaranteed minion pressure, she's free to trade off the SI7 agent. She's obviously concerned with her life total as well.
Oh!
Roaster drawn. So here's the thing.
Wow.
There's 2 options for this now. It's number 1, the Shadow Reaper Anduin for the momentum swing, or the Crowd Roaster to try to bolster your board for the following turn. there's a 4/4 already on board to contest the Crowd Roaster, but you can trade that off with the Twilight Drake.
Yeah,
I think
true.
the Shadow Reaper Anduin's better because of the pressure it represents.
Yeah, I agree. The Crowd Roaster was a bait. And I think that this is better. Plus, it gains you a life immediately, which is very nice. The 5 life is not to be understated.
So 3 4/4s, a hit of fatigue, an extra hit of fatigue is coming, excuse me.
This is 2.
And I think Pathra, now I think the window has sailed on in terms of that damage. She's got to deal 18 with no attacks this turn other than a dagger.
But she can set up a big board. That's a very big board. Henge Clan Thug SI7 agent clears off almost everything. And Jia doesn't really have access to convenient removal without Psychic Scream.
So Pathra is effectively at 15 health because of the 3 points of fatigue she's going to take next turn. So if Jia can find a way to deal 10 damage on the following turn, or I'm sorry, 15 damage, that's enough. So all she has to do is play defense in this spot, and the Shadow Reaper Anduin's helping her do that.
Yeah. But the 15 damage doesn't come very easily either.
I'm just not sure Pathra gets there. I think it requires a big misstep from Jia for that to happen.
SI on the 4-1. Dagger the face. Could be very close. Jia does not have Mass Hysteria in her deck, by the way. It is just Psychic Screams to deal with this immediately, but it also takes away the fatigue count, but then she can start chipping away at life total. Blood Acolyte.
That's not a good one here.
Not enough mana to even use Primordial Drake for a clear. Oh, sorry, a clear on a minion. Is it time to go fishing with the Witch Doctor?
I'm kind of looking at it 2 different ways. And the first one in my head was trade into the SI7 agent Primordial Drake, just hope it sops up some damage. The remaining 3 cards from Pathra are kind of scary in that instance, though. If one of them sap, you're done. But I think that with the Tar Creeper and the way it was taken down, you're pretty confident sap's not there. So that's why my instinct moves that direction. The second one is just use the Fire Tree Witch Doctor, weave in 2 hero powers, end up clearing off the Henge Clan Thug. There's a lot of damage left if you do something like that and your nose is open. So I feel like it's better to take the risk with Primordial Drake and just hope that Pathra doesn't have the goods.
Would she have the goods at that point?
She has the goods at that point.
Okay. There's 16 damage right now.
Yeah, this is a lot of damage coming in on Pathra's side. I didn't do the exact calculations on it, but it looks like it's Greenskin Eviscerate, and then you get to hit for 5, 6, 7, plus 8. So you get to hit for 15 on
13?
Because the Eviscerate comes in here, right?
Right, plus the 2 damage on the dagger.
Yeah.
Yeah, for 15 damage, that's still a little bit off.
But that leaves Jia under the threat of everything. She has to kill everything the next turn.
A second Primordial Drake. Psychic Scream or the Witch Doctor. Is there any way that she can counter lethal? She's at 15 and she's going to take 4 next turn, so she's at 11?
Yes, Pathra is effectively at 11 here.
9 damage with the Mind Blast. 11. Oh my gosh.
That doesn't help.
Dude, if she picked up Mind Blast, she probably would have had it, right? Because it's 11 damage with the Fire Tree Witch Doctor.
So she can get 6 damage from hero powers, 5 damage from Mind Blast. So Fire Tree Witch Doctor into a Mind Blast still wins the game, I believe.
Oh,
2 damage from hero power.
You are correct.
4 mana is absorbed from the Fire Tree Witch Doctor, 6 mana, second hero power, 8 mana, the Mind Blast, last 2 mana, the hero power.
Exactly.
That's 11 damage and then the hit of fatigue. So the Fire Tree Witch Doctor, that's the only way that Jia wins right now.
Right. Or the Mass Hysteria is not good.
Whoa!
Oh, she didn't weave in hero power first.
So she thought about Psychic Scream in that instance, and she's also thinking about Shadow Visions, and there's probably something else she's thinking about that might keep her alive.
I don't know. Shadow Visions doesn't have much discover. There's a Holy Fire in the deck. That's what she can discover. So the thing is, there's a dagger for 2 damage, Admirable. She can clear everything. The Mind Blast came way too late. The Scream it doesn't matter anymore.
And if she has to use Shadow Visions to get the Mind Blast, she doesn't have the mana for the extra damage.
Close, but no cigar, just barely off.
It just does not get closer than that one. That means Pathra...
Are you serious?
It's like, this was like the hardest game of her life, it seems like, in this spot. Like, without winning this game, Pathra is in dire straits in the set. But now that she's won, it feels like she is so far ahead in the series.
Yeah, because now that all that remains is Jia's Token Druid. And that deck, in my opinion, has also a ton of question marks.
Man, oh man, that game went back and forth with the Myra's draw and then the Tar Creeper draw. Everyone was thinking that it was like, oh, Patra's going to win, oh, Gia's going to win, and then it came down to the wire. That game couldn't have been any closer. And don't go anywhere because we're going to be sticking here, and there's going to be the next game right away. So sit tight, and we're going to be talking about this game right now. So tell me, why was that game so close?
It's the Myra's unstable element. You know, we've talked about how much the Rogue has struggled throughout the entire tournament thus far. In the games it's gotten, it feels like it's sometimes barely getting there, and its losses have been quite decisive in a lot of spots. But you see the difference in having access to card draw, having you know, the early pressure that starts to compound the issue. The Myra's changed the scope of the game unbelievably, and without that card, Patra would not have been able to win that game.
Yeah, Rogue plus drawing cards has historically been a very successful combo in Hearthstone. I mean, it's iconic in the class mechanic. It's called combo, for crying out loud. You want to combo cards. And because it's also a tempo rogue, tempo tends to mean that you dump your hand on the board to maximize your pressure and as much as your board presence. That means you're going to be low on resources. It's going to be really important for tempo rogue to hit draw cards in order to keep up that pressure, which a lot of times it hasn't. And I'm looking at Patra's opening hands, and those are 2 or even 3 cards that you really love to see. Although, double rating party, is that too over the top, you think?
Double rating party might be a little excessive in this spot. You know, my head tells me that you have Myra's unstable element. That's the one you really need. The rating parties are more playing a support role to that card. So I'm not entirely sure if I'm keeping the rating parties in this situation. Patra, did she throw back Myra's unstable element? So there is a different dynamic to this where Gia's playing a token druid deck. So Whispering Woods, Force of Nature, and then tokens afterwards, they do present a threat. But I think throwing back Myra's unstable element after what it's just proven to be is an error. I think that that's a panic button that Patra just hit, and Jia has an opening now because Patra's missing that card.
Yeah, it also kind of depends on what token druid is even capable of, but I guess it makes sense. They don't really run like that wild growth anymore. They have a greedy sprite instead. And Jia just has like a little bit of a slow start. And I wonder if instead Jia can play a defensive game. Look at her. She's running the old Force of Nature card. That's a classic set card.
I'm still tunneled in on that Myra's unstable element mulligan. I think that is a very large error on Patra's part.
You gotta move past it, Admirable.
That's the thing I want to like laser in on. This gets swiped. Patra's going to play the next thing. Things are going to, you know, get muddy. There'll be a lot of trades going back and forth and such. Gia's not even swiping. She's going straight up for threatening potential here, right? Just the branching pass in her hand alone represents so much damage with this.
Yep, but Patra has ways to answer part of the board, and there's no Soul of the Forest for Jia. Going wide. I was kind of anticipating some rating party action going here, but
already Whispering Woods has gotten a 1-for-1 trade just on the backstab, and there's 5 left. So now it's gotten a 2-for-1 trade. That's the second backstab that's used. Now it's also pulling the dagger away from Patra. She's going to use that anyway, but there's still 3 minions left on board. That's 1 card that Gia's used.
Do you know what would be really nice to refill the hand with?
Myra's unstable element.
You read my mind. We're like this right now. Jia, at this point, can just swipe and even clear defensively. I think this was brilliant. You know, I was kind of thinking about the reactive swipe because that's what a lot of druids have done just automatically, and I like that she was evaluating. She knows this deck.
And Savage Roar an option in that spot too. Like, you know, Savage Roar is going to represent a lot of damage in certain situations, but it's oftentimes not a flexible card versus what Patra's doing. If she has aggression going, Savage Roar sitting in your hand, hoping that this was another card. But with Jia having both swipe access, with having the Force of Nature Arcane Tyrant, I feel like almost any direction she ends up taking her hand right now pans out in a favorable situation. Patra's just had to expend too much to defend against the threat that Whispering Woods provides.
Yeah, and you know, rating party is great, but that's picking you up Dread Corsairs and South Sea Deckhands.
Yeah.
That's now pretty weak to spreading play.
And now we're looking at the second scare for Patra's side, where, again, all the board-wide buffs represent so much damage, and she has to think about Tree Speaker that's in Gia's deck as well. It's a 5-mana 4/4 that turns all of your Zapperlings into, I'm sorry, all of these 2/2 Treants into 5/5s.
Right.
You have to be worried about that in some capacity.
Treant Druid was an archetype that people were thinking about, but just didn't really have enough support, I think, to really put it over the top. Plus, there were just so many other good Druid archetypes.
Yeah, so Patra's found copies of Raiding Party since then, and those are going to help her, keep that gas going as she fights off this battle. Eventually, Jia runs out of ways to make waves of minions, and that's really the weak point of her deck, is those are limited cards in the Whispering Woods and in Force of Nature. Once those stop happening, you have a much better recovery point from Patra's side.
Yeah, Jia also has defensive measures, though. I'm just looking at Spreading Plague, Branching Pass, the classic 10-mana combo right back at your opponent. They go wide with Pirates because they just played Raiding Party. I still think Jia has a lot of game left here, even though Patra is putting a pretty good amount of offensive through this Captain Greenskin.
Yeah, the Greenskin got some work done here, though. It
Yeah.
could have gotten easily swiped last turn. Jia chose to favor development over, and I don't blame her for that. But the Greenskin now dealt 5 damage, and it still pulled the swipe. So all that development you just took, Patra drew cards for that turn, wiped out your board position, and dealt you extra damage.
It's a lot of damage. 2, 4, 8, 12, 15, 18, 20 damage over 2 turns.
Yeah, and we're going to add, potentially a little bit more to that as well.
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of weapon swings that are coming in.
The thing is, Jia, again, has defensive tools, not just through the Spreading Plague, but also gaining armor. So she could gain armor first and then Spreading Plague after your opponent developed onto the board.
Yeah, I'm looking at that branching passive. That has to be aimed at armor. I think that is a minor win for Patra.
Yeah, I think Patra has to evaluate too if she wants to squeeze in this extra damage with the 2-1 dagger, or she wants to Shadow Blade, because Shadow Blade, there's 4 swings. Do you think this game's going to go on for 5 or more turns?
I think it very easily could. And, the cards that come to mind to that are Spreading Plague, Furion, Jia just having, extra ways to go wide on board, and you sitting there wondering to yourself, why don't I have as many resources I needed?
I agree.
Because she has to pick away at boards when Jia makes them. So Oaken summons,
That's nice.
Since Greedy Sprite is gone, this guaranteed summons Violet Teacher in this spot. But there's not really a lot to couple with the Violet Teacher in this situation.
I don't think that really matters nearly as much as just being able to get the armor and board presence. It's just a good pickup. Imagine if Branching Pass said, recruit a minion from your deck. You'd be like, yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable to gain 6 armor and recruit a minion from my deck.
Yeah.
That's what Oaken Summons did.
Patra's got some strong game here, though. I mean, this is a lot of development that she's going to be placing, and Gia's hand, pretty light on defense. Really the defense is seated in Spreading Plague. But again,
man.
you have to take advantage of that Spreading Plague in some capacity. Patra's hand right now, pretty effectively picks apart that major tool.
Yeah, it's kind of a gut check time too, but I don't think you have the gas to be able to go full on aggro here. I think you have to deal with the Violet Teacher. It's too scary otherwise. You're also approaching the turns where, because Greedy Sprite's on the board, the moment Ultimate Infestation comes down, I think this game gets locked out.
Yeah, and that's, I think, really one of the biggest issues that Patra has here is, as much as I don't really want to do it, I think eviscerating this Greedy Sprite is a very reasonable play.
Really?
Yeah, can you afford to lose a Dread Corsair here? I mean, I would turn an Eviscerate into a Dread Corsair in this spot if I could.
Fair enough.
I want my 3/3 minions.
I want my 3/3. I want my repetitive damage. I want to stop my opponent's Druid's hero power from being effective.
Your spells are there to do one of two things. Number 1, get you further ahead, or number 2, keep you from getting too far behind. And Patra's looking at the Eviscerates of getting way further ahead. She has pure damage in mind for this spot.
Spreading Plague number 2 is very useful.
Patra has effectively moved all in with this play.
I don't blame her. She doesn't have Miles and Stable Elements, so it feels like her hand's telling her, do damage.
I think Gia's got the goods to defend.
Oh, definitely. Just has to be, careful not to get too careless here. And also, the thing about Spreading Plague with Violet Teacher interactions, it'll summon the 1/1 Apprentice beforehand. So you only get one Scarab.
Right. No, that's a good point. Now, that being said, I still think you probably Spreading Plague in this spot. It's really ugly looking, but it enables the Arcane Tyrant as well.
The Arcane Tyrant.
Clearing 2 minions off a board, a 3rd one with your hero power.
Brutal. Not game deciding. It's still nice, though.
Sometimes it's just enough. And since Patra ended up, pretty much pushing in with the minions and the damage in the spot and not taking care of board at all, I think Jia has a major opportunity to counter pressure as well as start defending herself.
Just more damage. That's all that's in Patra's hand right now. And with this Eviscerate on the Violet Teacher, She's stuck waiting for Myra's Unstable Element, the card that she threw away at the beginning of this game. I mean, the jury's still out whether or not that was just the way that decided the game right here and then, but it's looking like the tides are drastically turning.
I don't think it decided the game, but without that card, you are just, this hand looks so not as good. Like with Myra's Unstable Element, I would think that Patra's probably ahead by a slight amount.
I mean, Patra also needs to eliminate some of this board. A Savage Roar branching pass would be lethal. So she has
at 19.
Yeah, she has to clear up a lot of this board.
I haven't even been paying attention to the life total.
Whoa. Oh, man, you are so low on resources. Is she going to attach this?
That's the thing, is at this point, I think she has to play for that big.
Oh, my gosh. That feels bad. A waste of a charge.
She needs Myra's next turn.
And Gia's one UI away from winning this game, pretty much. Tree Speaker's a little late. So
these are all weak plays.
yeah, Tree Speaker is what? Just a vanilla minion at
It's a
this point.
4-4 right now.
So it doesn't really do much.
Now, Jia could Soul the Forest, trade in, and make a 5-5 from it. But you're looking at 9 damage sitting on the other side of the board.
Draw a card, gain armor.
Oh,
Oh!
Malfurion gets found!
Okay.
That is so huge for Jia.
Job's done.
There's no one individual card that can be able to finish this game. The Firefly, this is nothing.
That's miserable. That's the worst draw in the deck for Patra. You know, equivalent to preparation, equivalent to, you know, whatever else useless card is meant to play a support role in this spot.
She's clearing the board. She's giving up the aggressive plan at this point.
I don't think that she has an option to go face in that situation.
She needs to protect this Valdori Strider. She needs to draw the spires that are shuffled in their deck. She needs to draw Myra's Unstable Element. And if that doesn't work, she needs to get a hot tub time machine and somehow rewind to the beginning of this game in the mulligans and keep Myra's Unstable Element. Which, in some weird way, she probably already did. And because she did, she caused herself to mulligan it because she didn't trust herself.
Yeah, this Malfurion is just, this is brutal to Patra. If it's not Myra's next turn, Dan, you're done.
Yeah, it's game because there's there's Soul the Forest with Whispering Woods. And I don't care if it just summons 2 or 3 Wisps. The fact is it summons any. To the face.
Yeah.
Savage Roar could be lethal with just 2 minions remaining on the board. And that's game.
Yeah, game 5. Wow. Now, that being said, I'm going to move past the Myra's point. We beat it to the ground at this one. It's Patra's Mechathune Warlock
Versus Token Druid.
that's going to be taking on the Token Druid. So that's the big question. Can you clear off the boards enough to give yourself the time to find that point?
Yeah, and more importantly, can Jia layer her threats? Because Mechathune Warlock has the best card against Token Druid, Defile. But, I mean, Token Druid can layer their threats very effectively, and I wonder how Tree Speaker plays an interaction there.
Yep, that's the matchup that, you know, ideally in this situation, Patra's going to have. But I think that game should have been closed.
Yeah, that was incredibly close. Yeah, but that Myra's mulligan, I know you guys are done talking about it, but I just kept thinking about it that entire game. But that is no longer what we are going to be worrying about. We're going to go into the final match of the championship round, Warlock v Druid. Don't go anywhere after a quick break. Welcome back, everyone. This is game number 5 of WSOE 5, and this is for all of the cookies. This is for the medallion itself, the bragging rights, the championship title, the Mecha'thun Warlock versus the Token Druid. And I know that I've been fixated on this Token Druid, but guys, tell me a little bit about this Mecha'thun Warlock. How is this matchup going to go?
I think it's going to go one of two ways, where either Jia gets an insane style of start that Pathra fails to check and wins the game with a AoE board wipe, or Patra's going to pretty much blow up a lot of boards in a row and never be under significant threat from Jia and be able to find the endgame combo.
Yeah, but here's the thing. There is a lot of damage that comes out from this Token Druid deck the moment you give it any breathing room, and I want to see Jia be able to put on that pressure and force Pathra into bad decisions, or in the situation where she layers her threats. And we're going to find out, because this is a pretty decent opening hand.
I'm liking what I'm seeing from Jia's side.
Okay.
Patra's got Corpse Taker, which to me that's one of the scariest things I think that Jia has to deal with from a defensive measure.
Again, the Corpse
Now,
Taker.
I don't mind that, because Mortal Coil's there to help draw those extra cards. Helps fight against Greedy Sprite when its Oaken Summons out, etc. And the Defile's there. So I don't think that Corpse Taker is paramount to the game plan. And oftentimes it can be a better mid-game draw because it's at a point where you've taken some damage in some capacity.
It's true.
But there's a lot of little tricks that Pathra can do to offset what Jia is going to be playing. Think about Glacial Shard. You think about Wax Elemental. These occupy attacks at key times.
Yeah.
Those occupying attacks at key times means that Pathra can buy that extra life in unique ways that throws Jia's game plan for a loop. So
it's true.
I'll be curious to see how this ends up panning out. But for right now, Pathra, she's got a great hand to fend off the first, wave or so that Jia's going to throw, and then it's, it's up in the air from there.
Pathra already kind of at a point where she wants to evaluate if she wants to play a one-mana card. Don't really think it's worth it. Greedy Sprite, getting that ramp is going to be pretty crucial for Jia to get her plays a little bit quicker. Still looking for Whispering Woods.
Yeah, if Patra's going to life tap here, she does have to find a way to expend a card. So that means, Glacial Shard, Wax Elemental, something along those lines is going to be played. And
I like Glacial Shard.
And Solarium is going to find, a pretty weird circumstance in this deck. In totality, the goal of this deck is to get to the end of the game, have played 2 Galvanizers to make your Mecha'thun cost 8 mana. You then play Mecha'thun and use Blood Bloom. Blood Bloom makes your next spell cost life instead of mana. You play Cataclysm, you discard your whole hand, and you blow up your Mecha'thun, and you win the game.
Pathra going for the card draw. This has a pretty big risk with a pretty big payoff. That Force of Nature draw for Jia was very good in my opinion, because I was favoring the Glacial Shard to freeze the minion and not give Jia that opportunity, that mana flexibility to be able to do that. And now she gets to keep the coin.
And that could change a lot of things.
Yeah, it's not an easy defile. Now you have to toss something into it.
You take a look at that medallion that they're playing for right there in the middle. That is such a key moment to draw that Force of Nature right there, because if Patra's going to defile, she has to combine something with it. Now, she has plenty of good things to combine with it, but there's only one copy of Tree Speaker in Jia's deck.
Right.
Are you really going to respect it that much? And I think that's a tough one to call with.
Right.
I would tend to right now, just because the stakes are so high. But that's not winning Hearthstone. Winning Hearthstone is about understanding risks and mitigation at the right time. Just because something is scary, it doesn't mean it's the right play or the wrong play. You have to evaluate from top-down perspective, and that's really the pressure that Patra's facing in this situation.
Right. And actually, the truth is, because she set up enough of the board, she might be able to use Defile after the 5/5s come down, because she has 2/1s. She has the ability to trade into it to make a 3 health minion. I mean, maybe she can piece together something. I don't think she has to even overreact to Defile here anymore.
I think the 2 Wax Elementals buy her enough time that she doesn't have to press the Defile button in this situation.
Agreed. There's only so many attacks that can come down. And I mean, if I'm in Jia's spot, those 5/5s look pretty good. And there's
now,
a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 based off.
That's the one that, I have, some questions about right there, is because now Swipe is suddenly looking like a very dangerous card. It puts you in a position where the Defile doesn't necessarily sweep the board out.
This looks like a pretty good Tree Speaker to me. Transform all of your treants into 5/5 Ancients.
But that's where Patrick gets the payoff from playing that Glacial Shard. Is now she has the ability to use Defile and end up mopping up this whole board. It's a matter of, where you put the trades at, and then you go from there. And Acolyte of Pain picked up as well alongside the Defile. So the first attack creates a 2 health minion on board. She has a 1 health minion on board, and she has a 3 health minion on board effectively with the Wax Elemental in this spot.
I wonder.
There's got to be a Defile here.
I don't disagree. There's a 1, there's a 2, there's a 3. There's no 4.
Yeah, the question is, how do you create the 4?
Huh.
Or do you need to create the 4? I mean, she also doesn't necessarily need to clear the entire board.
Right, she can just Spellstone the last minion.
Right, or, you just draw your cards, take a hit, and then, figure out a way to mop up the board afterwards. She has multiple directions to take this, and it's a hard situation to evaluate. The step that I'm looking at mostly is Acolyte of Pain and Defile in some capacity. Does that fill up her hand too much, though?
Oh, yeah, actually it would.
So then do you cycle in a Dark Pact with this situation?
Oh man. Patch is out of time, and she needs to do this very quickly.
Spellstone and triple trade.
Ooh, this felt like the walls are crumbling.
And 2 of the mana got floated here with the Galvanizer. So I think she has some sort of plan in mind with the Galvanizer that I'm just not quite spotting at the moment.
Well, I think she just wanted to life tap. She's at 8 cards.
But she didn't life tap.
Right. She ran out of time. And I think she was counting her cards. I saw the hover over.
What?
And I think she was like, do I have enough cards? Do I play Galvanize or do I life tap? And I think she just froze a little bit too much. And that is a small crack in the armor that I'm looking for Jia to punish, and she has an opportunity to in some capacity, because now she has up to 8 mana this turn. I don't know if she needs to use all of it. I think this is still just good enough.
Yeah, I actually think Jia should not be casting spells in this spot.
I like this is good enough.
You want the minions big so that way you're not as vulnerable to Defile.
Right, and now Pathra has to use other things like her Spellstone.
Mortal Coil?
That would have been great last turn. To get the Defile off cleanly. And now Patra's taking big punish for that.
This is bad news.
Yeah. Yeah, there's 100% Defile because she didn't play Galvanizer, right? And that actually, oh man, this.
Oh, Galvanizer was
Galvanizer was a 2. So then you trade into the 3s. You make it to 3s, and then you have a 1-2.
You have a
3
3
on the
with
Wax Elemental, 4 on the Tree Speaker, 5 on the
Galvanizer Defile.
There's Galvanizer Defile.
Oh my goodness. And you have the Mecha'thun in hand. Normally you can't play the Galvanizer for the 2 unless you have Mecha'thun in hand, but she already had that.
Yep.
Yeah.
She had 100%. I mean, I was a little slow on the gun, so I mean that also shows you that Pathra was experiencing that mental block, and that is very difficult for her to overcome. And knowing the type of player she is, she's also beating herself up internally, but she needs to focus right now. This Spellstone is an act of desperation. How much damage do we have right here, Admirable?
I just saw Innervate, and I'm looking at Coin, Innervate, Ultimate Infestation. Like,
that's juicy.
The Druid deck from Jia doesn't necessarily have the key cards that get burned like a Malagos Druid does. Overdrawing in the situation can't lead to these colossal, devastating situations like burning a Malagos can. What it provides you with is a full 10-card hand, another 5/5 threat, and then 5 damage pile on top of it. Both the Spellstones are now gone from Pathra, so the healing that's remaining is Ziliax, Corpse Takers if that's active at that point, and a lone Dark Pact. For all intents and purposes, Pathra has to have 5 points of life remaining. You are effectively starting the game at 25 health, because if you only have 4 health left, you die when you use that Blood Boom combo.
That is true.
So for Gia's position right now, it's about evaluating all those situations. And if she goes with Branching Class here, that's +4. The Savage Roar is +6, and then the 7 that's on the board.
I just want plus attack here. I think your hand's so full, and you just want pressure. Yes, I like this play a lot.
That's 17 damage. 18 if you count the hero power.
Available to her at least.
And she looks like she's not going for Savage Roar in this spot.
I think she wants to keep it as an element of surprise, make Pathra a little bit worried. I kind of like the Savage Roar to challenge and put 6 extra damage in. Put her to 8, but that still didn't mean lethal. It meant a second swipe draw would have been lethal.
Yeah, so now my head looks at Ziliax, Mortal Coil, Defile in this spot, but that takes away part of the effectiveness of your Ziliax, so, my head clears that out and looks at Galvanizer Ziliax. What does that end up doing for you? That's 7 of your mana, and you have 1 left after that. Can you make use of the 1 mana? there is a 3-1 on board, so you can. Oh, excuse me, you get the discount on the Ziliax as well.
I think this is pretty wise. Leaving the Violet Teacher means that every spell that Jia casts opens her up to a Defile possibility. A second Galvanizer. That is an order situation.
Yep, that's
100%.
That definitely could have changed the way this looked.
Yeah.
Well, first you have the extra point on the Galvanizer in that spot.
And
so either you'd have a 1-2 in play, or maybe something in this order operation changes.
It's just that you have a cheaper minion, so if you need to squeeze in a bear Defile, and it's like these really small things that are adding up, Admirable. And that spells an equation of Patra's defeat if this keeps going. I do not mind swiping and pushing damage this time.
No!
You have 2 Savage Roars.
Swipe's pulling double duty right now because it's taken off the lifesteal effect as well. So Gia's trying to have this like surprise attack on damage where Patra maybe gets a little bit careless with the life total, and then you're just locking her from doing it. Like there's paths that win the game without actually killing Patra outright, but just keeping her in a spot where she cannot expend any more life because she'll only have 4 left.
Most spell stones have been used, so has been Ziliax. Patra's still very far away from drawing to the bottom of her deck.
10 more damage crashes in this turn. So even if Patra can eliminate the whole board, her only healing left is going to be Corpse Taker getting buffed, the cheaty ankle biters and their battle cry and such, and then that dark pact that's there. So she has to be super careful with how all of these things take place. And then additionally to that, get to the bottom of the deck.
Defile doesn't clear everything, even if she played Galvanizer and the Acolyte of Pain. I'm actually even thinking about the merits of Solarium, but you can't because you don't have Blood Bloom.
Yeah.
I like going for the Defile anyways. You can pick up a cheeky ankle biter by replacing the cards. You have a pretty strong likelihood too, and if not,
so you're looking at Acolyte,
Galvanizer, Acolyte, Defile. That's 7 mana. That gives you the ability to draw 3 cards and get a cheeky ankle biter. But if you don't, you are in huge trouble. And I think you are at that point of risk because there's way too many minions on the board.
so she's going to go for Defile into Corpse Taker and rely on the defense this provides to try to get something back. But since it's
There's no taunt!
the both Wax Elementals are gone! That's game! Jia is going to take it 3 games to 2 with a very patiently played Token Druid game and keep her title and be still the champion of WSOE 5.
Well played all around. Jia is able to make the comeback and defend her crown against Patra. And you gotta wonder, what if? There were so many points and decisions that was made this series that make us wonder what could have been here.
Yeah, it seemed like the pressure might have gotten into Patrick, but let's listen in to the champion and the one who almost came.
No, good game, dude.